Then I guess I will pick it up from here. My name is Jeremy, and I'm in the communications office here at Scripps, also working with the graduate office. And I'm going to try to pick up some of the additional questions we've received over the past hour and a half or so. Also, before we go any further, I also wanted to remind everyone that we are recording this, and we're going to format it and put it on our website in the admissions section of education.scripps.edu under graduate. And go into admissions, you'll see a link there to the video where we break it into four sections just to be convenient. So you can see if you just want to look at the faculty questions or just the students, you can. So that'll be in a few days from now. That'll be posted online. So you can go back and review that if you like. Thanks for the students who have decided to stay with us. And I'll take advantage of what limited time we have with them by picking up on some of the questions that we've gotten a lot of. A lot of students are really interested in the application about the statement of purpose. And of course, we have a page on that on the how to apply section. You'll see a link that says written narratives in there. You can get a little more detail about kind of what we're looking for. But I wanted to ask our current students kind of when they put together their statement of purpose, how did they write it to really stand out? And how much technical information do they put in there versus like how much personal information? Kind of give us a picture of what really worked for you.
I'm going to be honest. I felt like with the statement of purpose, the first step was almost like meditating on it. Like really thinking, like when you're in the shower, like thinking like, why do I like science so much? Why do I want to spend like 5 years of my life being paid like not a ton and like enough, but why do I want to do this? And because it's like not a small thing getting a PhD. And I think that brainstorming process was honestly essential for me to go and write a good statement of purpose. And not just that, but like what makes me special, what makes me like stand out. And before you put pen to paper, like spending a good amount of time just meditating on that.
I'll just add on to what Grace said. I really liked that. And I also think for me, it made it easier to think about the experiences in my life that have shaped me as a scientist and that have developed my passion for science as well. So thinking about even back to my middle school science field trips and then my college experiences in classes, as well as performing research and my experiences mentoring and my experiences helping other people understand science, and like what are those things that really drove you to be excited about research and discovery and problem solving. And I think that was helpful in the brainstorming process of why I'm excited about science.
Yeah, I think quickly
Going
to
off,
summarize, like those are great
yeah.
points. I just want to say like narrative. Like it's always important to like, whether you had this experience or that experience, like having your own personal narrative and being very clear is always like the way to go.
Two things, spinning off both that and Grace's point. I'd say tell your personal narrative, but also avoid cliches. We're all scientists. We've all had classes that changed our lives, and we all, watched Bill Nye as a kid. Talk about why the research problem that you want to study is really important to you. And then also, after you're done meditating on your application and your motivations for applying to a PhD program, it can be a pretty emotional experience, a pretty tough experience. So what I do is I just like take a page and take my rawest like thoughts and just write them all down. Like, I want to get into a PhD program so bad. I've waited so long to do this. And then like refine them down into something that's digestible to the committee. To just like get the emotion out first.
I did that too. I did like so much journaling. Like before I even wrote it, I was like, all these things, like all the things in my head, I just put them down.
Sorry, I'll also just add, like, definitely get feedback from individuals. I think especially from, like, I think it's easy to ask peers, but like ask the adults in your life as well, especially anyone that you know that may have gone to graduate school. Even like my dad knows nothing about chemistry, but I was just like, hey, can you read this? He had gone to graduate school in business, and so I was like, can you just like read the narrative and see what you think? I think that's a really, really helpful thing that I would emphasize.
Awesome. Thank you. Kind of continuing on that vein in terms of application requirements, kind of where you were when you came into graduate school. A lot of students are asking about research experience that is obtained before applying to graduate school, but also publications. And I know a lot of students, and I'll just sort of answer this right now, a lot of students come in and they don't have publications, and a lot of students don't have a lot of research opportunities at their undergraduate school if they're like from a small liberal arts college. But maybe hitting on one or both of those, if you all could touch on how much research experience you had coming into graduate school, and perhaps if you had any publications.
Sure. I went to undergraduate at MIT. I had one published paper from that. During my time in industry, I also acquired two papers, which I was not the presenting author on, but were published. And then beyond that, one of my gripes with industry that I wanted to kind of ameliorate by getting my PhD is the lack of control I had in research and the lack of ability to share it with the public. So in the year before I applied to my PhD program, I actually independently wrote a review article on a topic I was interested in. And it was only in the preprint stage at the time of my application. But writing about that and writing about that experience of trying to kind of gain the first real control over my research was very valuable. And I think that punched up my statement of purpose a lot. I also saw in the chat a lot of questions exactly on that topic of I had this opportunity, but it petered out, or because of circumstances, I haven't had kind of the ability to work in a lab very much. I think it's more important to write about times that you were able to take the reins and kind of make opportunity for yourself, even when it didn't fall into your hands.
Yeah, that happened to me. Like during COVID, COVID started when I was a junior in college, and then I was a senior, and I got an internship like rescinded. And honestly, I might have gone straight into grad school if it wasn't for that. But that's how life happens. And I got to be a teacher, and that was really fun. And so I did that afterwards. And then and I went to the University of Colorado Boulder, and I was also like an undergraduate research assistant in a lab there. Didn't get any publications from that, but got some great lab experience. Went and was a teacher in LA, and then came to Scripps to be a research assistant and did that for 2 years. And I only had one publication in the works, and it was in review when I applied. And I think I was like sixth author. So you don't need like tons of publications, if you can make yourself stand out in other ways. Yeah, it just depends. Everyone's different.
Yeah, I think I also I had no publication in undergrad, and I came directly from undergrad, as I mentioned. I also mentioned a little bit earlier, I did do like a lot of different types of research. So that might be a unique case where I was in like an organic chemistry lab my junior year, then I interned, then I did this lab. So I feel like for me, like, I don't want to say an excuse, but it was like I was not in a lab for a very extended period, which was kind of a reason that I didn't have a publication. So I think that if you're in a lab for like 3 or 4 years, it might be more important perhaps to get a publication. But yeah, I mean, it's very possible to, like I said, I had basically had a little bit less than 2 years of research experience in undergrad while I was taking classes, and I mean, it worked for me. So
I think I had a publication that I think had been accepted but wasn't published, if I'm remembering it right. And so I do think that was a really big boost for my application. But I also know lots of people that, again, didn't have any publications. I think that if you can get it, I think it's a good thing. I also came from a school that I came from Brigham Young University, which is like probably a school none of you have ever heard of. It's not super well known for chemistry research. And so I think it's also a good opportunity to just talk about, like what James was saying, like the things that I did have control over and the things that I did push the needle on within what I had control of.
And actually, a question related to publications and publications before applying, and for Paolo and Shannon. We've gotten at least one question about how, if a student has already submitted their application and sort of closed it out, can they go back in if new data comes in the next couple of weeks, if they have a publication that finally went to press? Is there a way to add that information back in to enhance their application?
So I would say there is a place in the application where you can list your publications, even those that have just been submitted and not published yet. So that information will be there. typically through December 15th, when the applications are still being prepared and sent to the committee for review. If you have an update, you can always email us and we can help you to update your application. After December 15th, typically no changes are allowed because applications are already being sent to the committee for review. And it's depending on where your application is in the cycle, it's probably, if it's already been reviewed, the committee is not going to go back and re-review or that kind of thing. But they will see, when they're reviewing the application, if you have one that's submitted, they're aware of that, and they kind of, depending on, like I said, where your application is in the process, they can go back and check. But typically they don't like to see a lot of new information coming in after being received. Same with like transcripts. You might be in classes currently, and then your grades come in. If it's before December 15th, you're welcome to send us an updated transcript and stuff like that. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend any changes after that because they probably won't get seen at that point.
Great, thank you. There's been some interest in translational research, drug discovery, and so forth. And many of you are familiar with our Drug Discovery Institute, the Caliber, as well as another one that's the Scripps Research Translational Institute, SRTI, that really works on sort of more computational things and so forth. Do any of our current students, I believe Alex did some work, but I think he's not on anymore, with Caliber. Do any of our current students have any experience with translational research? Can maybe talk about opportunities that you've had in grad school?
I haven't had any opportunities directly, but I know that there are people in my lab who are working with, like, Caliber can help in a variety of ways. I know someone in the previous lab I rotated in who did a screen through Caliber that was really helpful. Right now, my lab's working on expressing some antibodies that Caliber is helping out with. So I know that they can be just really helpful. Like, I mean, as the name suggests, translational stuff. So yeah, but I can't speak personally to like how it would, go on a day-to-day basis.
I know someone who did like a rotation at Caliber with like an MD PhD. So there are like you can do that. Those opportunities do exist, but I personally haven't.
Okay, thank you. Kind of a top level question. I don't think you've answered this already, but what would you say has been the most challenging part of graduate school so far for you, and perhaps unexpectedly so, or expectedly?
I think that the weirdest thing for me was the level like to which you dictate your own like life in the sense of like that was very like generic, but I mean it's like a lot of the pressure that's applied, as we kind of talked about earlier, is like applied from yourself. And so you have to create deadlines in your head and you have to like get things done experimentally. And a lot of jobs, it's your boss kind of dictates that, and it has a more rigid structure. But for us, like mentally and in terms of our day-to-day, we have to like really dictate a lot in terms of how we go about things. And it's like, should we be more motivated? Are we not motivated enough? And there are always those questions that you're going to ask yourself. And I think you have to have, like, the answer to that being, you kind of just have to have faith in like the process and have faith that what you're doing and what you've done to get you here clearly works. So just keep at it, and like you got to just push through it has been my solution. But I think the biggest challenge was more of that mental thing and trying to like find out how to address that.
I think for me, I have felt very victim to imposter syndrome, which I think a lot of us can relate to. And I am constantly just thinking like, am I doing enough? Kind of like what you said, Thomas, like, am I not doing enough? Am I doing too much? Should I be reading more papers? Like, like those, I mean, you should always be reading more papers, but it's like, how many should I read? How much is enough? So I think that's kind of been the hardest part for me. And like trying to compare yourself to other people in your lab and stuff can be hard. I don't know, just that internal battle with being a grad student.
I would totally agree with what Grace and Thomas said. I think that is hard, as well as like when things are hard, like it's on you. Like you have to be the one. Like you can't complain about, oh, this is someone else's fault. It's like, well, it's your experiment. And similarly, it's like you also learn how to celebrate your own successes. Because I mean, people in your lab are happy for you, of course, but it doesn't affect anyone else the same. And so you learn how to deal with failure as well as how to celebrate your own successes. And I think it's a really cool opportunity to grow as an individual and as an adult, in how you really can take control, as Thomas was talking about, of your own life.
Sure, I'd like to echo those sentiments. Having wanted to gain more control over my research from industry and now moving into my PhD. The issue for me, if there can be one, is that I'm now like let off the leash, and so I was like, what do I do with this control now? I can present anything I want to my PI if it's feasible, and so how do I really look through the literature and look at our capabilities in the lab and decide what I want to do over the next few years? So it's kind of really focusing yourself in on what you want to do now.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think a lot of graduate students, they really struggle with coming in and discovering that science is 90% failure and becoming comfortable with that. I just wanted to add that I feel like it's a very supportive community, even though graduate school is very difficult and very taxing. It's an incredibly supportive community. We have a counseling and psychological services office in both locations that works with students. The graduate office is always there. Lucas and Shannon and Paolo are fantastic, helping you out, and your own lab that you join. It's kind of a big family of people that are trying to root for you and see you to be successful in science. Um, thank you for that. Someone asked about part-time jobs. We generally do not allow people to work part-time jobs outside of their graduate studies, since graduate school is such an all-encompassing experience. I don't know if Shannon and Paolo, if you wanted to touch on that at all, or did I cover it all?
I think you covered it. Yeah, we do tell students and we don't allow for extra part-time jobs and things like that. But we also understand that it is expensive to live in California and Jupiter and all that. So I don't know if I want to say off the record. We wouldn't necessarily know if you were doing something in your off time. So, we don't advise it or recommend it or tell you, but I don't know how we would know if you picked up a small side gig just to make some extra money. So, yeah. But like it was mentioned, I think that during Lucas's part of the presentation, we offer a $10,000 interest-free loan to students, and that's available as soon as you start the program. So if you need any extra money, whether that be to maybe put a deposit on your apartment, buy a car, help with relocation expenses, whatever that might be, that is available to you, and it can help offset the cost of living and all of that. So that's something that we try to help students with.
Yep. And I would like to say, in addition to that while TAing is not required, if you do want to TA, you do get compensated. You don't do it just for the experience. So that's another way you can have a little bit of extra income.
Continue with the grad office staff here real quick. There's been a few questions about the two locations when you submit your application and requiring to select California versus Florida. Someone asked, do you have to focus really all your interest in one location, or if you're interested in both locations? And one person said, well, they like PIs. Can they do a project if they're accepted with people on both campuses? So can you maybe talk about that aspect a little bit?
Sure. In terms of the application, we kind of narrowed it down for up to 3 faculty of interest. So I guess if you really have a preference by campus, you would, focus only on California faculty versus all Florida faculty. I would say a lot of our applicants it'll be a mix. We'll see. It used to be 6 faculty, so you could be like 3 California, 3 Florida. Now that we only do 3, we're curious to see what the offset would be. But essentially, all the applications based on preferences will be reviewed by the 2 committees. And then, we kind of look at, depending on the research interests that you have, and who would you like to rotate with? Maybe that type of research is available at both campuses, or just, the student will have a lot of options here versus the other location. So those are some of the considerations taken by the admissions committee when extending offers. And something I do want to say, because you don't designate a campus on the application, just something to mention, once you are offered to be interviewed at one of the campus locations, you are only being considered for admissions and enrollment at said location. In terms of sort of PI collaborations, I know firsthand that some of our faculty will have collaborations with, faculty in California and vice versa. But in terms of research projects, it's really limited to your location. But that could be faculty from different departments. So that's the one thing I will highlight there. But that being said, for your committee that you're assembling for your academic career, a lot of our students can pick, faculty from both locations, and that's very common.
Yeah, faculty from different departments is a great point. We've had some questions about co-PIs, and that's actually increasingly common. I've seen that growing for years, and a lot of students now will have more than one PI, and their research project really kind of spans disciplines. Like there's a student who's working in the immunology, but who also has a co-PI in computational research. So his project involves both of those two things. That's not just possible, it's welcome and encouraged here, is that type of cross-disciplinary interaction between research areas. For letters of recommendation, there's a question about where those should come from. Research mentors versus an academic advisor. We had a question about letters of recommendation from someone who worked in industry for a period of time. How is that weighted, like industry advisor versus undergrad advisor and faculty from their undergrad institution?
I could say from the admissions committee review perspective, probably the most heavily weighted letter is going to be from your PI, your research supervisor, mentor. If you're someone that's been out of school for a while and you're working in industry, obviously, your boss, supervisor that you're working with is going to be important as well. Really, I don't want to say, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but it's really important that whoever is writing your letter can speak to how well they know you, your experiences, your academic aptitude, how, your ability to do independent research, those types of things. While it's great to have a letter from someone that you're a course instructor and they could speak to, this person always showed up, they were always on time, they got good grades, that's excellent, but that doesn't really tell the story. So we really want to see letters from those that can speak to your ability to do independent research, and if there's any challenges that you overcame in the lab, or how well do you handle conflict, or what's the word, like failures, like we were talking about. If your experiment didn't work out, how did you handle that? So you want to get letters from people that can speak to those points and address that. I think that answers the question. And again, I'll reiterate, it's very important that you ask for your letters as soon as possible, because all of these folks are very busy, and we would really, really hate to see your application not get pushed through to be reviewed due to a third-party person that kind of just didn't do their part on time. That's always very sad. And I have to hate being the one to break the hearts and tell you that your application is incomplete. So
and sometimes it's our own faculty that don't submit in time, and we will not consider those. So just keep that in mind.
They're very busy, and in fact, deadlines are swimming around in people's heads. So just try to be annoying and bug them and try to get your letters in on time.
Can I offer a piece of advice as well? When you do ask for a letter of rec from someone, put the word strong in there, that you want a strong letter of recommendation, because while it is uncommon, some people will submit letters that are not strong on your behalf. And sometimes, like, if you're not sure about someone, like maybe 50-50, just put the word strong in there just to be sure. It's harder for them to like lie about it if you put that in there,
You can also ask them, like, if they think they could give just ask them if they think they could give a good letter of recommendation. I don't think that's inappropriate to ask either, if you're somewhat worried about it.
That's great advice. Thank you for that. For Shannon and Paolo again, and Lucas, there's a lot of questions from international students. From the fundamental level, do we accept international students? And of course, the absolute answer is yes, we do. About 50%, I think, almost of our students enrolled each year are international students from across the globe. So we're a very international institution here, and we're proud of that. And it's something we celebrate, and something that we're not going to stop. And so I wanted to just touch on some of the points that are asked about that. There's some questions about the language requirements. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit. But someone asked, are we accepting international students who are not physically in the US during the application? And the answer to that is yes, but perhaps you can also touch on how we interview students who maybe aren't able to come here during the interview weekends in February physically.
Sure. Yes. So if for the international students that are not currently in the US during the time of interviews, we will conduct interviews over Zoom. And please keep in mind that Zoom, whether you interview in person or over Zoom, all interviews are treated equally as, important and treated equally by the faculty. So it makes no difference to the faculty as far as what format they interview you in. So don't think that your chances of getting accepted are any less because you didn't physically come and visit the campus. And then we will also have other sessions for you since you don't get to come actually visit the campus. You'll get a kind of a session like this where we'll have students that you get to talk to and ask questions to, as well as other departments on campus to talk about different things that we offer so you can get that kind of full experience. As Jeremy mentioned, yeah, we don't have a target. While we will have probably a target number of students we want to send offers to, we don't really pay attention to where the person is from, whether they're international or a domestic student. We're just looking to bring in the best of the best students. And in the past few years, it just happened to work out that I think this year was about 50% of the incoming class were international. I think last year was like 54%. So it turned out to be more international than domestic students. It just kind of happens as it happens. Whoever the best of the best students are is what we're looking for.
And can you touch really quickly on the language requirements and like waivers of the language requirements?
Sure.
Yes.
Right now we're accepting the TOEFL, the IELTS, and now we just recently added the Duolingo English test as an option for international students. But essentially, international students who are enrolled in the United States, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, or Canada, except for Quebec, if you completed at least 2 academic years in English institutions from these countries, then we can do the waiver. So that won't be required. But outside of that realm, we will require the TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo English test, and we must receive those test scores by December 1st with the application deadline. You can submit unofficial score reports, so we don't need the official test score sent to us for your application to be reviewed.
All right. I think we're just about at time here. So if anyone has any additional questions that we didn't get to today, you can certainly send that to us. I think it's admissions@scripps.edu is the best email for that right now. And we look forward to reading your application, and I hope that you, wherever you end up, that you have a great experience and do wonderful things out in the world. Thank you for everyone for your time. Thank you to our students and to our faculty and all of our presenters today, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.